Should we do regular fasting? If so, how should we schedule our meals so we get in enough protein, etc.? First of all, I'm not a fan of regular fasting at all, because here's why. There's just no need for it. A lot of people will say, oh, if you fast more, you're going to lose more fat. Well, no, that's not entirely true, because in the end of the day, a lot of it comes down to how much energy you're burning versus how much energy you're putting in, okay? When we're looking at fat loss or weight loss or any sort of change, it's a mathematical equation. It's literally, if you want to lose more fat, how can you burn the most amount of energy and eat less? Simple as that, right? Because then it creates a calorie deficit. You've seen that phrase bandied around the internet enough. You know what I'm talking about. I'm not going to go into that. But a lot of people think that we can hack around it. Really, like just by fasting. Fasting's not going to do that. That's why I don't advocate for it. There are plenty of ways to change it and hack that equation and make it so that you do burn more energy, and so fat loss does get easier. Fasting's not one of them. And then a lot of people go on and start talking about like the life expansion effects and whatnot. Yes, there are some that are documented to say that if you do fast more, you may be more likely to live longer, but still, once again, you're missing the big picture. We start to focus on these really little small hacks. If you've seen the hierarchy of health video, which I really encourage you guys, you need to go see that. This is focusing on the top bit, the rest, all these little things. What we really need to be focusing on is our nervous system, our hormones, our digestion, our immune system. Those are the key things that we need to be really hammering on hard, because that's what's going to get us the best effect. I'll give you an example right now, okay? A lot of people who are very stressed will have a tough time with losing fat. It gets very, very difficult. And so what happens is when they find that they're having a tough time, they go to little hacks like, okay, I'm going to go try intermittent fasting now. That is the worst thing that you can do for someone who's stressed. Here's why. When you don't eat, your sympathetic nervous system kicks in. This is like your fight or flight nervous system, and it starts ramping up, and it starts saying, hey, motherfucker, I'm stressed, all right? I'm hungry, I need more energy. So what it does is it elevates cortisol. Now what happens is these people who are stressed already have high levels of cortisol. Now they're pushing it up even higher. And this is where anxiety kicks in. This is where people start getting a little bit jittery, stop being able to focus well, get even more stressed. And what happens with cortisol is, on one hand, cortisol is necessary for us to lose fat. But on the other hand, if we have too much cortisol for too long, aka in someone who's stressed, who's then doing intermittent fasting, it gets even harder, right? It makes fat loss even harder. It makes it more and more and more difficult. So in that instance, we don't want to do it. Now, whenever you have an issue with fat loss, you generally have issues with other areas in your life too. It generally comes down to brain function, your sex drive, feelings of having high testosterone, low testosterone, etc., etc. We generally have a whole flow-on effect, which is why I think that fat loss is a really, really good example. Anyone who can lose fat easily will generally be able to perform at a pretty high level. Anyone who has a tough time with fat loss won't be able to perform at their highest tip-top level ever. So if we come back to intermittent fasting, is it something that I'd recommend you do on a regular basis? No, definitely not. I don't do it, okay? Some people swear by it. There is one argument for intermittent fasting where I'm a big, big fan, and this is what comes back to dopamine fasting. You may or may not have heard of this before. I'm going to explain it right now. What dopamine is a neurotransmitter. It's what we call the molecule of more. So every time your friend, right, goes and has a sniff of cocaine, anytime someone eats sugar, anytime anyone eats, some sort of food or has sex, we get this like little release of dopamine, right? And it keeps us wanting more and more and more. It is the molecule of more. That's the easiest way to remember dopamine. Now, one of the difficulties with dopamine, one of the big challenges we have is with addiction. Dopamine is the main reason why, the main neurochemical reason why people get addicted. It's why a lot of people get addicted to their phones these days, and people are scrolling Facebook, wanting likes, all this sort of stuff, because we're hooked, because every single time we get a like, it gives us a little spurt of dopamine. Dopamine becomes toxic at a certain level. And the time when it becomes toxic is different for each person, but it becomes really toxic when it starts having a negative impact on your life. And it starts leading you to make decisions which aren't in your best interest, leading you to make decisions which are moving you away from your summit. By the way, if you haven't seen the summit before, you don't know what I'm talking about, you need to click the summit link and check that out, because it's going to make so much more sense. So go through and look at that now. Anything that takes you away from your summit and from achieving your longest term goals that's when dopamine becomes toxic, and we need to manage it. The beauty of intermittent fasting is that intermittent fasting takes away all dopamine from food, from any drugs, from anything like that. And what it does is it makes us focus on all the little things, takes away cheap bursts of dopamine, which makes us less dopamine toxic, if that makes sense, okay? So that is one time where it can be good. But for anything else, intermittent fasting is an absolute waste of time. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you got something out of it and you want to learn more, click the link below or type in High Performance Conversations with James Cant and you'll be able to check out all the podcasts that we've done. We cover a stack of different topics, everything from getting your mojo back, overcoming anxiety, self-doubt, self-esteem, and learning from some of the industries and some of the world's top performers in both business and in health. Look forward to having you on there.